This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves coming to you live on 103.7 FM, the midnight hour. It's 3:17 a.m. on November 12th, and I'm breaking from our scheduled broadcast. The situation developing across the western counties demands immediate attention, regardless of what official channels are reporting. For those just tuning in, I need to deliver this warning with absolute clarity. Something is happening in the shadow of Blackwood Forest, something the authorities are desperately trying to contain within a narrative of animal attacks. My sources at Westridge Memorial Hospital paint a different picture. Dr. Abernathy, Chief Medical Examiner for 13 years, contacted me directly after being removed from 3 separate cases. The wounds don't match any known predator, he told me before his line went dead. The precision suggests intelligence, but the strength indicates something beyond human capability. The victims show evidence of selective tissue removal with dental patterns that match neither wolf nor human dentition, but somehow both simultaneously. The first victim, Forest Ranger Dominic Fletcher, was found 3 nights ago near the old fire watchtower. His radio transmission cut mid-sentence after reporting movement among the trees. Movement he described as too fluid for a man, too deliberate for an animal. When search teams found him 12 hours later, the official report cited wildlife encounter, but my contact within the search party described seeing tracks that transformed from human footprints to something else entirely over the course of 50 yards. 5 years ago, I witnessed something that shattered my understanding of human biology. While investigating an isolated outbreak for the CDC in the Carpathian foothills, my team documented physiological changes in affected individuals that defied medical explanation. Accelerated cell regeneration, spontaneous dentition transformation, and most disturbingly, skeletal reconfiguration that occurred without the expected trauma such changes should cause. The footage we captured was immediately classified, my research confiscated, and my team quietly disbanded. 3 of my colleagues disappeared into private sector research positions with government contractors. 2 others died in separate accidents within 6 months. The lunar cycle beginning tonight isn't just any full moon. Astrophysicist Dr. Eliza Winters from Princeton has identified unique electromagnetic properties during this particular alignment, radiation patterns that occur only once every 70 years. The last occurrence, November 1954, when 9 people vanished from the exact same region over 3 nights, leaving behind torn clothing and blood evidence but no bodies. I'm looking at historical records that show similar patterns dating back centuries. The Blackwood slaughter of 1884, documented in county archives as a great wildcat panic. The Thornhill Mine incident of 1743, where 27 colonial settlers barricaded themselves underground for 6 days, while beasts that walked as men prowled above. The pattern is undeniable to anyone willing to see it. The transformation myths exist in every culture for a reason. The Navajo skinwalkers, the Norse Ulfhednar, European werewolves, all attempting to describe encounters with the same phenomenon through different cultural lenses. What if these weren't myths or superstitions, but attempts to document a biological reality our science wasn't yet equipped to understand? Professor Garrett Thorne, formerly of Johns Hopkins Medical Research Division, spent 15 years studying rare genetic markers present in less than 0.1% of the population, markers he called dormant evolutionary expressions. Before his research was mysteriously defunded, Thorne had identified trigger mechanisms that could potentially activate these dormant genes. Primary among them, specific frequencies of lunar radiation and geomagnetic field disruptions. His final paper, withdrawn from publication but leaked through academic channels, suggested these genes represented not evolutionary dead ends, but adaptation potential, biological coding waiting for specific environmental triggers. Dr. Vivian Blackwood, and yes, Her family name matches the forest for reasons that are becoming increasingly relevant, had continued Thorne's research privately until her disappearance exactly 3 months ago. Her final communication to me included genetic sequencing data showing what she called expression potential, becoming increasingly active in subjects across the Blackwood region. I have her final recordings stored in this studio, evidence that could validate everything I'm telling you tonight. The tape is missing from my desk. It was here moments ago, organized with my broadcast notes. Something heavy just moved outside the broadcast booth. The security monitors show nothing but darkness in the hallway, yet the building's motion sensors are triggering in sequence, something moving toward the studio at measured pace. Whatever it is knows about the cameras. Intelligent. Purposeful. If you're in Westridge, Pine Haven, or Blackwood counties, I strongly advise staying indoors after sunset. Secure all entry points. The transformation victims appear to maintain fragments of human intelligence alongside heightened predatory instincts. They can open unlocked doors, manipulate simple mechanisms. Sheriff Donovan's report described claw marks on both sides of a doorknob at the Hargrove Farm incident, suggesting problem-solving capability despite the transformation. The first hour after moonrise appears to be when most encounters have occurred. As night deepens, the transformed individuals seem to move away from populated areas toward the deeper sections of Blackwood Forest. Multiple witness reports describe the same behavioral pattern. Initial aggression followed by apparent purpose. They're not just hunting, they're gathering. Deputy Marshal Richardson established roadblocks on Route 17 and 43 approximately 40 minutes ago. They're not letting anyone in or out. Official channels are calling it a hazardous materials situation, but emergency response protocols tell a different story. Military helicopters have been spotted approaching from Fort Kendrick, and my source within emergency management confirms CDC containment teams have been mobilized. They know exactly what's happening. I've been tracking purchase patterns in the region for the past week. Hardware stores across 3 counties have sold out of silver-based products. Ammunition sales have spiked precisely for rounds that match the caliber carried by local forestry services. Someone with authority knows the cycle is beginning again, and they're preparing while feeding the public animal attack stories. The phone lines are lighting up now. Reports coming in from the eastern edge of Blackwood. Multiple sightings of figures moving at impossible speed through residential areas. Law enforcement response times lagging by 17 minutes on average. They're overwhelmed already, and the moon has barely risen. I'll stay with you through the night, broadcasting as long as I'm able. If you have information, sightings, encounters, unusual behavior, call this station immediately. Document everything you can safely observe. Knowledge is our defense against both the threat in the darkness and those who would hide it from us. The broadcast booth temperature has dropped nearly 15 degrees in the past minute. My breath is visible now, clouding before me. The glass separating my booth from the outer office is fogging from the other side. I can hear breathing that isn't mine, something with lungs far larger than human capacity would allow. I won't stop broadcasting. You deserve the truth, no matter what comes through that door. I'll continue sharing what I know about the science that might explain these transformations, the history of outbreaks in this region, and most importantly, how to recognize the early signs of mutation in yourself or others. Because this isn't supernatural, it's biological, explainable, but no less terrifying for being natural. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves on the Midnight Hour. Stay tuned, stay alert. The darkness hides both monsters and truths tonight, and I'm not certain anymore which we should fear more. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves continuing the Midnight Hour emergency broadcast. It's 4:23 a.m. now, and I've barricaded the studio door with equipment racks. Whatever was moving through the hallway retreated 20 minutes ago, but not before leaving claw marks 4 inches deep in solid oak. I've photographed them, perfect arcs that match no known predator, with spacing that suggests a hand rather than a paw. A transformed hand. The reports continue flooding our switchboard. Westridge County Sheriff's Department has gone silent. Their last transmission, picked up by a ham radio operator in Pine Haven, described officers surrounded by multiple targets displaying coordinated hunting patterns. Before communication cut, Deputy Holloway reported seeing his partner, Officer Lawrence Winters, exhibiting early-stage physiological changes despite no visible wounds or contact with other transformed individuals. This suggests airborne transmission is possible under certain conditions. Let's be rational amid this escalating chaos. Humans cannot transform into wolves. That defies biological possibility. But what we're witnessing isn't transformation in the mythological sense. It's extreme genetic expression, dormant DNA activated by specific triggers. The looping appearance is incidental, a convergent evolutionary path toward optimal predatory adaptation. In 2018, geneticist Dr. Francesca Vittori at Northwestern University isolated a genetic marker labeled LPC1, a complex sequence present in less than 0.01% of the human population. Her research, published briefly before being retracted under mysterious circumstances, documented how this sequence remains dormant in carriers until triggered by a specific combination of factors: elevated stress hormones, exposure to particular light wavelengths present during full moons, and most critically, changes in electromagnetic fields that coincide with certain lunar phases. When activated, LPC1 initiates cascade reactions throughout the carrier's body: hyperstimulation of the adrenal system, accelerated dermal follicle development, osteoblastic activity that restructures bone density and shape, and dentition transformation as specialized cells activate in the jaw. Most alarmingly, subjects experience temporary frontal lobe inhibition, the rational, socialized human brain suppressed as older, predatory structures take control. The pain of transformation is excruciating. A witness from the 1998 outbreak, former lumber mill worker Jackson Thorne, described watching his brother transform. His screams weren't human, bones shifting under skin like snakes, his jaw dislocated and reformed before my eyes. But the worst was his eyes, recognition fading as something else took over. Jackson shot his brother with a hunting rifle. The autopsy was classified, but a mortuary technician later reported the body partially reverted post-mortem, suggesting the transformation isn't permanent. This isn't mythology. This isn't Hollywood fantasy. This is documented science deliberately obscured from public knowledge. The transformation follows predictable patterns observable in nature, just accelerated beyond normal evolutionary timescales and triggered by specific environmental conditions rather than gradual adaptation. The lunar connection isn't mystical, it's electromagnetic. The moon's gravitational influence affects Earth's magnetic field, which in turn can trigger epigenetic changes in susceptible individuals. The same principle explains why certain marine creatures synchronize breeding behaviors with lunar cycles, or why migratory species alter course during specific celestial alignments. We're witnessing biology, not supernatural intervention. The history of outbreaks in this region follows precise 70-year cycles with smaller recurrences at 7-year intervals. The Blackwood incident of 1887 left 23 people dead and twice that number missing before a mysterious fire destroyed most of the affected area. Historical accounts describe beasts walking as men, terrorizing outlying farms before converging on the original Blackwood settlement. What most historical accounts omit is that the fire was deliberately set by a specialized military unit, the first documented government intervention in these phenomena. In 1942, what official records describe as mass hysteria with violent manifestations prompted a military quarantine of 3 townships in this region. Declassified photographs I've obtained show soldiers equipped with specialized ammunition and restraint devices designed specifically for capturing rather than killing targets. They weren't controlling mass hysteria, they were containing and collecting specimens. The 1998 lost weekend that authorities blamed on contaminated water supplies and mass hallucination corresponds precisely with a rare lunar perigee event. Hospital records from that weekend show 17 patients admitted with identical symptoms: elevated body temperature, accelerated hair growth, extreme dentition changes, and violent episodes followed by complete memory loss. All 17 patients were transferred to a facility identified only as Site R in redacted medical files. None have been seen since. I've pieced together these accounts from archives, witness testimonies, and redacted government documents acquired through 15 years of investigation. Each outbreak corresponds with rare lunar events, like the one occurring tonight. The alignment currently forming overhead happens once every 70 years and lasts 72 hours. We're 6 hours into the cycle. The earliest documented case in North America dates to 1781, when explorer Francis Blackwood, yes, the forest bears his name for reasons that become increasingly relevant, led an expedition to catalog flora and fauna in this region. His final journal, recovered decades after his disappearance, documented encountering men who became beasts under the winter moon. His expedition vanished shortly after, but fragments of his field notes survived, describing beings that were neither fully man nor animal, but something caught horrifically between states of being. What if this genetic anomaly isn't new but ancient? A divergent evolutionary path that has existed alongside conventional human development for thousands of years. Archaeological evidence from sites worldwide shows unexplained skeletal anomalies in roughly 0.1% of ancient human remains, the exact percentage that carries the dormant LPC1 gene today. These remains show bone density patterns and cranial formations inconsistent with known human variation, but consistent with partial expression of the transformative traits we're observing now. Or is it something engineered? The classified Project Lycon, operated from a subterranean facility beneath Blackwood Forest between 1952 and 1971, conducted extensive research on genetic enhancement through targeted activation of dormant evolutionary potential. The project's existence was only revealed through documents declassified in 2003, heavily redacted but containing references to successful integration of lupine genetic sequences and controlled transformation triggers. Were they studying the phenomenon, or did they create it? Dr. Imogen Blackwood, great-granddaughter of Francis and former lead researcher on Project Lycaon before her mysterious disappearance in 1977, documented a virus-like vector capable of transmitting the active genetic sequence through fluid exchange. Her final report, smuggled out by a laboratory technician, detailed how this vector could lie dormant in carriers for decades before activating under specific conditions. This explains the clustered nature of outbreaks and their apparent contagion pattern. It's not just genetic heritage, but transmissible infection. 3 emergency response centers have gone dark in the past hour. Cellular networks are failing across the affected counties. Internet connectivity is degrading. They're isolating us, containing not just the outbreak, but information about it. Ask yourself why the national media isn't covering a wildlife emergency that has prompted military deployment and regional communication blackouts. I've just received confirmation of 3 more incidents in Westridge County, Forest Service personnel reported humanoid figures moving at impossible speeds near the old mining access roads before their radio transmission abruptly terminated. Thermal imaging from private security systems shows multiple heat signatures converging on Blackwood Forest, dozens of them moving with coordinated purpose. They're gathering for something. The transformation isn't just physical, but neurological. Transformed individuals exhibit pack behavior with complex hierarchical structures. Dr. Montgomery Walsh, primatologist and cognitive researcher, documented similar phenomena during the 1977 occurrence before being institutionalized for stress-induced psychosis. His notes describe transformed subjects communicating through vocalizations and body language more sophisticated than wolves, but entirely distinct from human patterns, a hybrid communication system unique to their transformed state. This isn't random savagery. There's method in their movements, purpose in their patterns. They're selecting targets, establishing territory, and most disturbingly, they appear to be identifying potential carriers among the unaffected population. Multiple witnesses report transformed individuals cornering victims but not attacking, instead performing what appears to be some form of assessment before either attacking or withdrawing. The military containment teams know this. That's why they're capturing rather than simply eliminating transformed subjects. Whatever is happening in Blackwood Forest represents biological potential beyond conventional human limitations. Strength, sensory acuity, healing capacity, and communal cognition that would revolutionize warfare if harnessed and controlled. When we return after this generator check, I'll share survival protocols developed by Dr. Vivian Blackwood before her disappearance. If you're in the affected areas, this information could save your life or help you understand what you might be becoming. The protocols include early symptom recognition, transformation suppression techniques, and methods for maintaining cognitive control if transformation begins. The generator's failing. Power grid instability is spreading beyond the initially affected areas. This isn't coincidental. Transformed subjects have been observed targeting infrastructure with tactical precision. They're creating darkness, their natural environment. Don't trust emergency broadcasts directing you to gathering points or evacuation centers. Fragmentary reports suggest these are being compromised systematically. Stay with me. Knowledge is survival, and I still have much to share about what we're facing. This isn't the end of humanity. It's the emergence of something that has always existed alongside us, hidden in our genetic shadow. Understanding it is our only hope of coexistence. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves on the Midnight Hour. Don't touch that dial. Your life may depend on what comes next. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves continuing our emergency broadcast on backup power. It's 5:41 a.m., still dark. The main transmitter is damaged but functioning at reduced range. If you can hear my voice, you're within 50 miles of Blackwood Forest, within the containment zone. For the past hour, I've been receiving calls from witnesses and survivors across the region. Their accounts form patterns that could save lives, yours perhaps. Garrett Hollister contacted the station from a hunting cabin 10 miles east of Pine Haven. 3 nights ago, he was driving home when he spotted a figure collapsed in the middle of Sawmill Road. When he stopped to help, thinking it was an accident victim, he realized the person was undergoing some kind of seizure, muscles spasming, limbs contorting at impossible angles. Garrett described watching the person's face elongate, jawbone dislocating with audible cracks as new dentition erupted through gum tissue. He fled when the figure began to change, skin stretching, facial structure elongating into something not quite wolf, not quite human. He's been barricaded in his cabin since, watching similar figures prowl his property each night after moonrise. They don't behave like animals seeking prey or humans seeking shelter. They patrol, communicate through complex vocalizations, and appear to be searching for something or someone. Lucia Vasquez, wildlife biologist stationed at Blackwood National Forest Preserve, has been documenting unprecedented behavioral changes in local fauna. For 3 weeks, she's observed mass migration patterns across diverse species, prey and predator alike abandoning territorial behaviors in established habitats. In her words, it's as if they're fleeing a coming natural disaster. Bears abandoning winter dens, deer herds moving during peak hunting season, predators ignoring easy prey in their rush to vacate the region. Animals possess sensory awareness beyond human capability. They know something is happening, something that terrifies predator and prey equally. Most disturbingly detailed is the account from Dr. Marcus Whitfield, who contacted me privately after treating patients at Westridge Memorial Hospital. Before communications were restricted and military medical personnel took control of the facility, he documented patients exhibiting extreme physiological anomalies, structural changes to facial bones, hypertrichosis, excessive hair growth, developing over minutes rather than days, and most alarmingly, bone structures that appeared to be actively reshaping while patients remained conscious and in excruciating pain. Transformation isn't instantaneous or painless. The process itself causes trauma that would kill ordinary humans if not for the simultaneous enhancement of cardiac function and accelerated healing capabilities that activate alongside other changes. I've cross-referenced these contemporary accounts with historical testimonies from previous outbreaks. County archives from 1887 describe identical progression, isolated sightings escalating to coordinated movements over a 3-day cycle coinciding precisely with the lunar peak. Witness testimonies from 1942 detail the same pattern of infrastructure targeting, power stations and communication lines first, followed by systematic isolation of outlying communities before sweeping inward toward population centers. Security camera footage just arrived from a gas station outside Westridge. I'm reviewing it now on the emergency monitor. The timestamp shows 11:47 p.m. last night, just after moonrise. A customer enters normally, pays for fuel, then suddenly convulses, dropping to the floor. The transformation isn't instantaneous like Hollywood has conditioned us to expect. It's gradual, excruciating, a horrific metamorphosis as the body fights against its own changing biology. Bone and muscle visibly shift beneath skin. The jaw extends, the skull reshapes. The clothing tears as the physical form expands. The entire process takes approximately 7 minutes. 7 minutes of conscious agony before the transformation completes. This confirms what the classified Project Lycon documents suggested. Transformed individuals retain consciousness throughout the process. They remember who they were. They recognize familiar faces and locations. Reports indicate that the transformed individuals retain fragments of human consciousness, recognition, hesitation when confronting loved ones, moments of apparent lucidity before predatory instincts reassert control. This isn't complete regression to animal instinct, but a hybrid consciousness, human intelligence directed through predatory impulse. Vincent Hargrove survived an encounter 3 nights ago when a transformed individual broke into his workshop. He recognized the creature as Nathaniel Kessler, his neighbor of 15 years. Despite physical transformation rendering Kessler almost unrecognizable, something in the creature's behavior, a characteristic head tilt, a moment of hesitation, allowed Hargrove to recognize his friend. His eyes changed, Hargrove reported. For just a moment, I saw recognition. He could have torn me apart, but instead, he turned and fled. This supports the theory that emotional connections can temporarily override predatory impulses in transformed individuals. Not all encounters end with recognition and reprieve. The Mercer family on the western edge of Pine Haven wasn't so fortunate. First responders found evidence of selective targeting. Some family members killed with surgical precision, while others were apparently assessed and left unharmed. This suggests the transformed individuals can detect genetic markers in potential carriers, identifying those who might join their ranks versus those who cannot. I've just received word that authorities have established a quarantine zone around Blackwood Forest, extending 20 miles in all directions. They're calling it a wildlife management operation, but my source within emergency response confirms it's a level 4 biological containment protocol, the highest classification, reserved for novel pathogens with pandemic potential. Military checkpoints now control all access roads. Aircraft have been restricted from the airspace. They're containing not just the outbreak, but information about it. If you're within the affected area and experiencing symptoms, unusual sensitivity to light, unexplained muscle spasms, sensory hypersensitivity, or inexplicable rage episodes, please seek isolation immediately. Barricade yourself in a secure location away from others. The transformation cycle appears to last approximately 72 hours, corresponding to the peak lunar influence. After this period, historical patterns suggest those affected will return to human form, though not necessarily without residual physiological and psychological changes. Based on Dr. Vivian Blackwood's research notes, the initial infection vector requires fluid exchange, typically through bites or deep scratches that breach the dermal layer. However, with each successive outbreak, the transmission mechanism appears to be evolving. We now have documented cases of apparent airborne transmission under specific conditions, primarily in confined spaces with multiple transformed individuals present. The virus-like vector shows signs of adaptation, becoming more efficient with each cycle. Once transformed, subjects appear capable of recognizing other carriers even in human form, suggesting some kind of pheromone marker that identifies those with the latent gene. This explains why certain individuals are targeted for infection while others are killed outright. It's not random savagery, but selection, a biological imperative to propagate the genetic expression. The hunting patterns demonstrate disturbing intelligence. Transformed individuals systematically target communications infrastructure first, then power, then transportation networks, isolating communities before converging. They coordinate through vocalizations that sound like wolf howls to human ears, but contain complex information based on pitch modulation and rhythmic patterns. Analysis of recorded howls reveals structures similar to syntactic language rather than simple animal calls. What we're witnessing isn't just random attacks. There's a pattern of selection, isolation, and gathering. Satellite imagery shows heat signatures converging on the center of Blackwood Forest. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of transformed individuals moving toward a central point approximately 3 miles from the abandoned Project Lycaon facility. Whatever draws them there remains unknown, but it appears to be the focal point of this emergence. Military response protocols reveal foreknowledge. The speed and precision of containment suggests preparation. They anticipated this occurrence. Specialized ammunition, restraint devices designed specifically for transformed physiology, and isolation protocols that account for enhanced physical capabilities were all pre-positioned within hours of the first reported incident. Someone knew this was coming and prepared accordingly. The question becomes not just how to survive this outbreak, but what happens after. Previous cycles ended with apparent regression. Transformed individuals returning to human form with no conscious memory of their experiences. But genetic analysis of bloodline descendants shows permanent alterations, subtle changes that persist through generations, becoming more pronounced with each cycle. We're witnessing accelerated evolution, directed by some unknown mechanism toward a specific adaptive outcome. Reports are coming in of unusual weather patterns forming over Blackwood Forest, cloud formations and electromagnetic disturbances inconsistent with normal meteorological activity. Lightning striking repeatedly in the exact same location, the convergence point where transformed individuals are gathering. This corresponds with Professor Thorne's theory of environmental triggers working in both directions, not just triggering transformation, but being affected by the collective biological energy of transformed individuals gathered in proximity. When we return after this brief generator reset, I'll discuss the unusual history of Blackwood Forest itself, why this location continues to be the epicenter of these events. There's something about this geographical location that serves as a focal point for the phenomenon, something beyond coincidence or historical accident. Stay with me, listeners. The knowledge I'm sharing may be your only defense against both the transformed and those who would use this outbreak for purposes beyond public safety. Whatever is happening in Blackwood Forest tonight represents not just a threat, but a turning point, possibly the emergence of something that has been waiting generations to fully manifest. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves. The dawn approaches, but darkness holds secrets older than light. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves continuing the Midnight Hour emergency broadcast. It's 6:52 a.m., first light struggling to pierce the unnatural cloud formation that has developed over Blackwood Forest. For the past hour, our station has been receiving reports of power outages spreading systematically across the region. Cell service has become increasingly sporadic, following a pattern that suggests deliberate targeting rather than system overload. If you can still hear my voice, consider yourself both fortunate and endangered. You're within the containment zone, but not yet isolated from information. That makes you valuable and vulnerable. I need to share what I've uncovered about Blackwood Forest itself, the epicenter of these events throughout recorded history, and likely long before. This isn't random. This location holds significance beyond its convenient isolation from population centers. There's a reason why generation after generation of the phenomenon returns here, why the transformed are drawn to its center like moths to flame. The answer lies buried in both soil and history. In 1943, the United States government acquired 200 acres of Blackwood Forest's heart under the War Powers Act, declaring it essential for the national defense effort. Official records filed with the county assessor's office show it was designated as a strategic materials research site, purportedly for testing timber resources for military applications. But declassified documents I obtained through 15 years of Freedom of Information requests tell a different story. The site actually housed Project Lycaon, a classified biologicals program studying what they termed extreme human adaptability under lunar influence. The choice of name itself reveals foreknowledge. In Greek mythology, Lycaon was transformed into a wolf by Zeus, the first werewolf in Western cultural tradition. They weren't naming a random research initiative. They knew exactly what they were studying. The facility operated officially from 1943 to 1962, encompassing both the major outbreak cycle of 1942 and the minor recurrence of 1949. Staffing records show a curious blend of expertise. Geneticists working alongside cultural anthropologists, evolutionary biologists partnered with linguistic specialists, military physicians collaborating with historians focusing on folklore and mythology. They weren't exploring a new phenomenon. They were contextualizing something ancient within modern scientific frameworks. Construction photographs from 1943 reveal something extraordinary. The government facility wasn't built on virgin forest land, but on the foundation of something far older. Excavation images show stone structures predating European settlement, with architectural elements that match no known Native American building techniques from the region. Carbon dating performed on wooden support beams incorporated into these structures dates them to approximately 1600 BCE, over 3,600 years ago. Whatever stood at Blackwood's heart was ancient when Rome was still a collection of huts beside the Tiber. The facility officially closed in 1962 following what internal documents cryptically reference as Containment Breach Alpha, an incident that reportedly resulted in the loss of 17 research personnel and the unplanned exposure of test subjects to civilian population centers. Blackwood Township's historical records from that same year document a sudden tuberculosis outbreak requiring quarantine of affected individuals, a convenient cover story for removing transformed individuals from the general population. However, locals reported activity at the site well into the 1980s. Lights, vehicle movements, periodic security sweeps keeping civilians at distance. Satellite imagery from 1994, which I've acquired through contacts in commercial surveillance firms, shows a new structure built over the original facility's foundation, a structure absent from all official government property records. What appears from above to be a simple fire observation tower stands directly above the deepest subterranean level of the original Project Lycaon facility. I've obtained partial records from Project Lycaon through countless Freedom of Information requests, lawsuits, and contacts within government archives. What remains unredacted describes experiments on genetic expression potentiation and adrenal response amplification under lunar radiation conditions. There are references to dormant evolutionary characteristics activated by specific electromagnetic frequencies. Most disturbing is a partially redacted passage mentioning successful integration of specific genetic sequences from specimens recovered during Operation Moonfall 1942, followed by extensive data on transmission vectors and generational expression patterns following controlled exposure. They weren't just studying the phenomenon, they were actively attempting to weaponize it, to control transformation and direct the resulting enhanced capabilities toward military applications. The question isn't whether werewolves exist. The evidence surrounds us tonight. The question is whether they occurred naturally or were engineered, and if engineered, engineered from what? What specimens did Operation Moonfall recover in 1942, and what genetic material did they extract that could be successfully integrated with human DNA? Dr. Vivian Blackwood's research suggests something more profound than government experimentation. As the last scientific member of the Blackwood family, descendants of Frances Blackwood, who first documented the phenomenon in North America, she had access to family records dating back centuries. Her private journals, which she entrusted to me shortly before her disappearance, detail a genetic anomaly present in her family line, the same LPC1 marker identified in transformed individuals, but in a dormant, stable form that allowed carriers to maintain human form while retaining certain enhanced capabilities, accelerated healing, heightened senses, increased strength, and endurance. What if Project Lycaon wasn't creating werewolves but studying a genetic line that already existed? What if the Blackwood family weren't simply observers of the phenomenon, but carriers of it in controlled form? Frances Blackwood's expedition wasn't a random scientific journey. It was a return to ancestral territory, drawn by the same inexplicable pull that draws transformed individuals to the forest's center during each outbreak cycle. The geographical peculiarities of Blackwood Forest support this theory. Geological surveys reveal unusual mineral compositions in the soil, high concentrations of specific rare earth elements that affect electromagnetic conductivity. The forest sits atop an intersection of ley lines, theoretical energy pathways that, while dismissed by conventional science, correspond with statistically significant clusters of unusual biological and electromagnetic phenomena worldwide. During the peak lunar alignment currently in progress, magnetometer readings within Blackwood Forest show fluctuations that defy standard geomagnetic patterns, localized fields strong enough to disrupt electronic equipment and potentially affect biological processes sensitive to electromagnetic stimulation. Like the expression of dormant genetic material, I'm receiving reports that several transformed individuals have been captured by military containment teams. Eyewitness accounts describe not random, feral behavior during these encounters, but coordinated evasion techniques, almost tactical approaches to the quarantine barriers. Transformed individuals appear to be communicating through complex vocalizations, coordinating movements to probe for weaknesses, and in several documented cases, deliberately drawing fire to expose defensive positions. This is not the behavior of mindless beasts. This is something else, a collective intelligence emerging within the affected population. Dr. William Sullivan, cognitive theorist and consciousness researcher, proposed in his banned 2017 paper, Collective Consciousness Emergence Under Stress Conditions, that certain environmental triggers could activate dormant neural networking capabilities in compatible individuals, creating a hive mind-like awareness where autonomous units maintain individual action capability while sharing a unified purpose and collective knowledge base. Dr. Vivian Blackwood built upon this research, proposing that the transformation wasn't a disease but an adaptation, triggered by environmental factors, but serving an evolutionary purpose. In her final notes, sent to me via encrypted channels the night before her disappearance, she suggested that carriers share a form of heightened consciousness during transformation, a pack mentality that transcends normal human cognition while incorporating human intelligence and problem-solving capabilities. I've just received an anonymous call from someone identifying themselves only as Lupine 7, claiming to be a survivor of the 1998 outbreak. They described not just physical transformation, but a mental one, connecting to what they called the unity, a shared consciousness they could still partially access even after returning to human form. Most intriguingly, they mentioned the others, those who cannot transform, but hunt those who can. According to this source, these hunters have existed alongside carriers for centuries, engaged in a shadow war most of humanity never notices. They possess their own genetic adaptations, not transformation, but enhanced longevity, specific sensory capabilities tuned to detecting carriers even in human form, and immunity to the transformative vector. Where werewolf genetics enhance strength and pack consciousness, these hunters evolved stealth, longevity, and isolated operation capability. Historically, they maintained balance, culling transformed individuals who lost control while allowing stable carriers to live undetected within human society. But something has changed in recent decades. The hunter population has diminished while carrier bloodlines have expanded, creating an imbalance in the ancient equilibrium. What we're witnessing isn't just an outbreak, but a resurgence, these carriers revealing themselves after decades of hiding. The question becomes, why now? What's changed to trigger this mass emergence? The answer may lie in astronomical alignment currently forming, a configuration that occurs once every 70 years when specific stellar radiation patterns coincide with lunar electromagnetic effects. Dr. Astrid Montgomery, astrophysicist at Mount Wilson Observatory, documented unusual radiation signatures during the current lunar cycle, patterns matching theoretical models for genetic activation energy requirements identified in Project Lycaon documents. Historical records show similar astronomical alignments coinciding precisely with previous major outbreak cycles, 1887, 1942, and the current event. But this alignment features an additional component not present in previous cycles, a specific comet making its first approach to Earth in approximately 3,600 years. The timing aligns precisely with the carbon dating of those ancient structures beneath the Project Lycon facility. Local indigenous traditions speak of star wolves, beings who came from the sky when the wanderer returns to the nightlands. Anthropologists dismissed these as typical celestial mythology until archaeastronomical analysis revealed the wanderer described in these traditions matches the orbital pattern of the comet currently approaching Earth. The myths weren't describing supernatural events, but documenting astronomical observations and their connection to biological phenomena. The power just failed completely at our location. Emergency systems are engaged, but backup power supplies are limited. Reports indicate systemic failures across all infrastructure within 30 miles of Blackwood Forest Center. Military communication channels have gone silent or switched to frequencies beyond our monitoring capability. We're witnessing not just containment, but information blackout. They're eliminating all external observation of whatever is happening at the forest's heart. Thermal imaging data from private security systems shows hundreds of heat signatures converging on the central point in Blackwood Forest. The location of that observation tower built over the original Project Lycon facility. They're not just gathering randomly, but moving in concentric patterns, establishing perimeters, creating what appears to be a defensive formation around the central point. Protecting something, or preparing for something. The unusual weather formations over Blackwood have intensified in the past 30 minutes. Cloud patterns defy meteorological modeling, swirling in counter-rotational spirals centered precisely over the convergence point. Lightning strikes have increased in frequency and specificity, repeatedly hitting the same location, the observation tower. These aren't random electrical discharges, but something directed, as if the electromagnetic buildup is being channeled deliberately. Professor Elizabeth Radcliffe, specialist in comparative mythology at Miskatonic University, documented similar weather phenomena in her analysis of transformation myths worldwide. Her research identified consistent descriptions of atmospheric disturbances preceding transformation events across disparate cultures with no historical contact, suggesting observation of actual meteorological patterns rather than cultural transmission of mythological elements. What if these weather patterns aren't just accompaniments to the transformation, but catalysts, the final trigger in a complex sequence of environmental factors required for full expression? The electromagnetic disruption, the specific lunar radiation, the stellar alignment, and now directed electrical discharge, creating the precise energy frequency needed to activate dormant genetic material across a broader population than those already transformed. Military containment protocols suggest awareness of this possibility. Specialized equipment deployed to forward bases includes electromagnetic pulse generators and atmospheric ionization devices, technology designed to disrupt or counter the specific frequencies building within the storm system. They're not just containing transformed individuals, but attempting to prevent additional transformations among the broader population. I've just received something extraordinary, thermal imaging from a private aerial drone showing the central clearing in Blackwood Forest. The transformed have formed a perfect circle around what appears to be an excavation site. The observation tower has collapsed, revealing a structure beneath, something emitting energy signatures unlike anything in known technological catalogs. The transformed aren't random victims of an outbreak. They're coordinated participants in something deliberate, guardians preparing for activation of something ancient. Our backup systems are failing. I don't know how much longer this broadcast will continue. If you're still receiving this signal, understand that what's happening in Blackwood Forest isn't just an isolated incident, but potentially a turning point in human evolution. The emergence of something that has existed alongside us for millennia, guiding our development in ways we've never understood. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves at the threshold of understanding. The answers lie in Blackwood. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves broadcasting on emergency frequency 121.5 megahertz. The primary station has been compromised. I've relocated to a secondary transmission point using portable equipment. It's 7:38 a.m., dawn breaking through unnatural cloud formations over Blackwood Forest. If you can hear this broadcast, understand that conventional communications across the entire region have been systematically dismantled. This may be the last uncensored information you receive about what's truly happening. In the past 20 minutes, military surveillance reports indicate a significant tactical shift. The transformed individuals are retreating from populated areas, abandoning engagements with containment units, moving with coordinated purpose deeper into Blackwood Forest. Military containment units report losing track of multiple subjects despite advanced thermal imaging technology, infrared tracking systems, and aerial surveillance. They're not just hiding, they're not retreating, they're converging with strategic purpose. I've just received a secure transmission from a source identifying themselves as Hemlock, a designation I recognize from classified documents related to Operation Silverlight, a covert program established in 1963 specifically to monitor and contain transformed individuals between major outbreak cycles. This source has provided verification codes matching those used in Project Lycon communication protocols. Their identity is genuine. What they've shared aligns with fragments I've been piecing together for years. A tapestry of historical evidence, genetic research, and carefully preserved folklore that points toward a single, staggering reality. The beings we're calling werewolves are one half of an ancient biological rivalry. Two divergent evolutionary paths that split from mainstream humanity thousands of years ago, developing specialized adaptations that serve diametrically opposed survival strategies. The other branch, what cultural folklore has labeled vampires. Before dismissing this as sensationalism or delusion, consider the scientific perspective. Two parallel adaptive strategies optimized for different environmental pressures and social structures. The werewolf gene expresses collective strength, pack mentality, and lunar cycle synchronization. Adaptations favoring group survival, territorial defense, and coordinated hunting. The vampire gene expresses a completely different survival approach. Extreme longevity through cellular regeneration, reduced metabolic requirements, specialized dietary adaptations focused on hematophagy, and sensitivity to specific light wavelengths that would naturally limit daytime exposure when ultraviolet radiation posed greatest threat to their altered physiology. These aren't supernatural entities from medieval imagination, but human subspecies that diverged from our evolutionary line during the Upper Paleolithic period, approximately 30,000 years ago. The evidence appears throughout archaeological records worldwide. Skeletal remains showing either extreme canine development and altered cranial structure, or elongated lifespans with distinctive dental formations optimized not for tearing meat, but for accessing blood vessels with surgical precision. Project Lycaon wasn't studying werewolves in isolation. There was a sister project, Nosferatu, focused on the other genetic branch. Historical records confirm both programs operated in parallel from 1943 to 1971, sharing research facilities but maintaining separate security protocols and research objectives. The government wasn't creating these beings. They were studying already existing populations, attempting to weaponize their unique biological capabilities while keeping their existence hidden from public awareness. According to my source, the current werewolf resurgence is a direct response to vampire activity in the region. 3 months ago, a group of vampires established a presence in Blackwood. The first time in decades they've moved so openly into traditional werewolf territory. This territorial incursion corresponds precisely with Dr. Vivian Blackwood's disappearance. She wasn't just researching werewolf genetics. She was documenting both subspecies and their interactions, attempting to broker a new understanding between ancient rivals. Her genetic heritage gave her unique access to werewolf social structures, while her scientific credentials provided cover for gathering information about vampire activities. Her disappearance wasn't abduction by either faction, but deliberate immersion. She transformed voluntarily to access collective knowledge available only through what the Project Lycaon documents called unity consciousness. I'm receiving data now about unusual blood supply thefts from regional hospitals over the past 3 months. Authorities attributed them to black market medical supply chains, but the pattern matches documented vampire territorial expansion activities from historical records. Quantities taken consistently match estimated nutritional requirements for a cohort of approximately 15 to 20 individuals, precisely the size of a typical vampire lineage group when establishing new territory. The werewolf outbreak isn't random, it's a response, a counter-colonization. These transformations are a defensive adaptation triggered by the presence of their ancient rivals, a biological early warning system activating dormant genetic potential in carrier bloodlines to defend their ancestral territory centered on Blackwood Forest. This conflict has historical precedent. Records from 1887 document a similar vampire expansion attempt, followed by mass werewolf transformation in response. The pattern repeated in 1942 during World War II. While human attention focused on global conflict, these subspecies engaged in their own territorial struggle away from public awareness. Each time, the conflict reached equilibrium through negotiated boundaries rather than mutual destruction. An evolutionary standoff between equally matched adaptive strategies. What's changed this time? Why has this ancient conflict suddenly broken into the open after centuries of careful concealment from mainstream human awareness? The answer lies in astronomical alignment and geological factors unique to the current cycle. The comet currently approaching Earth carries radiation signatures that specifically amplify both transformation vectors, werewolf and vampire alike. Historical records from both Project Lycaon and Nosferatu confirm heightened expression of specialized genetic traits during previous approaches of this same comet, approximately every 3,600 years. More critically, geological surveys conducted beneath Blackwood Forest in 2017 discovered what researchers classified as an anomalous metallurgical deposit approximately 300 feet beneath the central clearing, directly below the observation tower built over the original Project Lycaon facility. Spectroscopic analysis indicates composition matching no known terrestrial mineral formation with electromagnetic properties that intensify during specific astronomical alignments, including the current one. My source confirms what I've long suspected. Both subspecies believe something is hidden beneath Blackwood Forest. Something connected to their origins, perhaps even the catalyst for their initial genetic divergence from mainstream humanity. The ancient structure, carbon dated to 3,600 years ago, wasn't built over this deposit by coincidence. It was constructed specifically to monitor and potentially access whatever lies beneath. The current conflict isn't just about territory. It's about control of this site during the critical alignment window. The first opportunity in 3,600 years to access whatever remains buried beneath Blackwood Forest. Both sides believe it contains answers about their origins and potentially evolutionary advantages that could permanently shift the balance of power between their kinds. I've just received infrared satellite imagery showing both subspecies converging on the central clearing from opposite directions. Transformed werewolves approaching from the north and west, vampire cohorts from south and east. They're not engaging directly yet, but establishing perimeters approximately 1 mile apart, surrounding the excavation site where the observation tower once stood. What's most remarkable about this imagery is the physical distinction between the two subspecies. Where werewolves present as transformed human lupine hybrids, massive, fur-covered bipedal forms with enhanced musculature and distinctive cranial structure, the vampires appear superficially human but with distinctive thermal signatures registering significantly below normal human body temperature. Their movement patterns show impossible speed and precision, biomechanics that defy conventional human limitations without visible transformation. Historical documentation from both Project Lycon and Nosferatu explains this fundamental difference. Werewolf adaptation focused on physical transformation, dramatic but temporary expression of enhanced capabilities requiring significant energy expenditure and therefore limited to specific cycles. Vampire adaptation prioritized efficiency, subtle but permanent alterations allowing continuous expression of enhanced capabilities within a seemingly human form, requiring specialized nutrition to maintain. Different evolutionary strategies solving the same fundamental challenge: how to enhance human genetic potential beyond baseline limitations while remaining viable within Earth's ecosystem. Neither pure human nor separate species, but specialized adaptations of human genetic potential. The military containment operation has split into two distinct protocols. Operation Moonfall targeting werewolf containment from the north, Operation Daysend focusing on vampire containment from the south. Different tactical approaches for each subspecies based on their distinct capabilities. Wide perimeter encirclement with overwhelming force for werewolves. Precision strike teams using specialized technology for vampires. The true nature of this conflict reaches beyond current territorial disputes. My source has provided fragments of what both subspecies call the original history, accounts passed through generations describing their common origin approximately 30,000 years ago. Both werewolves and vampires believe they were not natural mutations, but deliberate adaptations created by what they call the architects, beings who arrived when the Wanderer crossed the night sky. Archaeological evidence supports interaction with an advanced civilization during that period. Anomalous technological artifacts appearing suddenly in the archaeological record, dramatic leaps in human cognitive development, and the emergence of consistent mythological structures across geographically isolated cultures worldwide. The Wanderer referenced in these accounts corresponds to the 3,600-year orbital period of the comet currently approaching Earth. What if both subspecies represent deliberate adaptations of human genetic potential by an advanced civilization, biological experiments abandoned when those creators departed, leaving their subjects to develop independently? What if the structure beneath Blackwood Forest contains technology intended to monitor these experiments across millennia, activated by specific astronomical alignments to transmit data back to those who initiated the divergence? The excavation at Blackwood Center has reached what appears to be an entrance, a sealed portal of unknown metallurgical composition embedded in bedrock. Both werewolves and vampires have established positions surrounding this discovery, neither advancing, but both clearly intent on accessing whatever lies beyond. Their ancient rivalry temporarily suspended by mutual interest in this greater mystery. Government containment forces have established a tertiary perimeter beyond both subspecies positions, not engaging directly, but containing the situation, preventing public awareness while gathering intelligence. Their objective appears to be neither eradication nor protection of either subspecies, but acquisition of whatever technology lies beneath Blackwood Forest. The electromagnetic disturbances centered on Blackwood have intensified exponentially within the past hour. Satellite imagery shows energy patterns consistent with activation of something beneath the surface, concentric waves of magnetic disruption expanding outward from the excavation site, correlating precisely with the approaching comet's position relative to Earth. I've just received word that Dr. Vivian Blackwood has been identified among the transformed werewolves at the excavation site, not as a subordinate member, but in leadership position, coordinating their activities with evident authority. More surprising, infrared imaging has identified a second figure approaching her position from the vampire encampment, moving alone across the neutral zone between opposing forces. Facial recognition software identifies this individual as Dr. Xavier Blackwood, Vivian's brother, officially declared dead in 2012 after disappearing during a research expedition in Eastern Europe. The Blackwood bloodline apparently carries genetic potential for both adaptive expressions, werewolf and vampire, distributed across family branches that separated centuries ago but maintained awareness of their common heritage. They're meeting at the excavation site, representatives of both subspecies, united by blood relation despite divergent adaptations. Whatever lies beneath Blackwood Forest appears significant enough to temporarily suspend an ancient conflict, bringing together evolutionary rivals in common purpose for the first time in recorded history. The military response has shifted. Special containment units are withdrawing to defensive positions, establishing observation posts rather than engagement parameters. They're waiting, watching to see what emerges from this unprecedented cooperation between ancient rivals. I've just received electromagnetic reading charts from monitoring stations surrounding Blackwood Forest. The patterns match theoretical models for activation of quantum entanglement technology, instantaneous communication across vast distances regardless of conventional limitations. The structure beneath Blackwood isn't just a monitoring station. It's a beacon designed to activate during this specific astronomical alignment, transmitting data across space to whoever left it there millennia ago. Both subspecies appear to be working cooperatively now, combining their distinct adaptive advantages to access the sealed entrance. Werewolf strength and collective problem-solving capacity, coupled with vampire precision and individual specialized knowledge, complementary adaptations that were perhaps never meant to be rivals at all, but collaborative expressions of human potential, optimized for different aspects of a common purpose. My source suggests a staggering possibility that neither werewolves nor vampires are the experiment, but rather the experimenters. What if these subspecies were deliberately created as caretakers, guardians of humanity designed to guide our development across millennia, protect us from external threats, and ultimately prepare us for contact with those who initiated their divergence? Their conflict not natural enmity, but the result of fragmented understanding of their original purpose, competing interpretations of their shared mission. The portal is opening. Satellite imagery shows brilliant light emerging from beneath Blackwood Forest, illuminating the clearing despite daylight. Both werewolves and vampires have formed a perfect circle around the excavation site, no longer opposing forces, but unified in purpose, creating a living perimeter around whatever is emerging. Military containment protocols have escalated to highest alert. Specialized units with classified technology are mobilizing toward Blackwood Forest from bases across the country. Whatever is happening has triggered contingency protocols established decades ago for precisely this scenario. The return of those who created these subspecies, who perhaps created all of us. Our understanding of human history, of our own origins and development, may be on the verge of fundamental revision. We are witnessing not just the resolution of an ancient rivalry between evolutionary offshoots, but potentially first contact with those who directed human genetic development from the beginning, returning after millennia to evaluate their creation. As a scientist and journalist, I've dedicated my life to uncovering truth, to separating fact from mythology. Tonight, I've seen mythology transform into documented reality before my eyes. The creatures of our ancestral nightmares, revealed as family, divergent branches of humanity's evolutionary tree, carrying genetic potential that exists within all of us in dormant form. If we survive this contact, if whoever or whatever emerges from beneath Blackwood Forest comes in peace rather than judgment, humanity must reconsider its relationship with these subspecies. They aren't monsters, but specialized adaptations of human potential, living demonstrations of what we might become under different evolutionary pressures. Something is approaching my current transmission location. Movement patterns suggest vampire rather than werewolf, precise, calculated advancement rather than pack coordination. They've tracked this emergency broadcast despite my countermeasures. The question becomes, are they here to silence this transmission or to ensure its continuation? To suppress information or to add crucial context from their perspective? A final thought before I potentially face representative of humanity's evolutionary siblings. What if the greatest threat isn't werewolves or vampires, but our own military-industrial complex seeking to weaponize their biology, to exploit the technology buried beneath Blackwood Forest for short-term advantage rather than understanding its intended purpose? The approaching figure has reached the perimeter. I recognize him from classified photographs. Dr. Xavier Blackwood, officially dead for 12 years, but clearly very much alive, transformed through vampire adaptation rather than werewolf expression like his sister. Their family carries both potentials, bridges between divided branches of enhanced humanity. He's gesturing toward this transmission equipment, not to destroy it, but to enhance it, connecting additional components I don't recognize. Technology that appears centuries beyond current development. He's not here to end this broadcast, but to amplify it, ensuring this information reaches beyond current containment protocols. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves, bearing witness to evolutionary convergence. The ancient rivalry ends tonight, not in victory for either side, but in reunification of purpose. Whatever emerges from beneath Blackwood Forest in the coming hours may redefine humanity's understanding of our origins, our potential, and our place in a universe far stranger and more connected than we've ever imagined. The light from the excavation site has intensified. The comet is directly overhead. The Wanderer has returned, and with it, perhaps those who set humanity on divergent evolutionary paths millennia ago. Whether they come as creators, observers, or something we lack language to describe remains to be seen. Xavier Blackwood is speaking now, his voice carrying unnatural resonance despite its softness. Tell them we were never meant to be enemies. Tell them we were guardians, created to protect different aspects of human potential until they were ready to know the truth. Tell them the cycle completes tonight. The transmission equipment is changing, components reconfiguring under his touch. This broadcast will continue, but I may not be the one controlling it much longer. Whatever comes next transcends individual perspective, werewolf, vampire, or baseline human. Stay vigilant, stay open to revelation, and remember that beneath superficial differences, we share common origin and perhaps common destiny. This is Dr. Malcolm Reeves at the threshold of understanding. The answers lie in Blackwood Forest, and they're about to be revealed to us all.